It's really great to be here. So I started the business when I was 24 and I was at Otago University where I did my master's degree in marketing, which I started in 1988, so that was before we had cell phones and the internet and all that type of stuff. But it doesn't feel very long ago that I was exactly in your shoes, hungry to learn about how these things work. And the story I'm going to tell you really is a work in progress. It's a story of a learning journey which I've been on right from the beginning, inspired by something that happened to me. And this is kind of what happened to me. So I found these beautiful feeling, ugly looking garments when I wasn't actually hitchhiking. That's an urban myth. I met an American girl who I became obsessed with. And, after kind of releasing her back into a backpacking pilgrimage, she came back and she said, "I've met this amazing farmer, you should meet him." So I met Brian Brackenridge at a cafe in Tinakori Road, and he threw me these t-shirts and he goes, "Try it on." So I had to take off my cotton t-shirt, and everyone laughed at me because it's pretty puny, and put the merino on, and that's when my life changed. I felt it was literally like a bolt from the blue. But that kind of wasn't enough. So before I started, I was a little bit like my cat, Max. And when I put the t-shirt on, it was like, you know, the world kind of changed a little bit for me. And the type of questions that were going through my head were, I know after feeling the clothing for a while, I thought, and giving it to my friends, and noticing that everyone was experiencing the same thing, I know this will work if I don't screw it up. So how do I not screw it up was kind of the mantra initially. How can I get other people to experience what I'm experiencing, build a business around it and not screw it up? Because at business school you hear about the failures as well as the successes. So this is kind of what I wrote. It's a pretty boring looking document, but I wrote a business plan. And at second year at Otago, one of my papers was on why businesses fail, and there were three main reasons. There was an undifferentiated product, so my question was, how do I start learning about using design? There was a lack of capital, and I was broke, so I thought, how do I raise some money? To get the initial seed capital, I went to the bank and told them I was I had to remortgage my house. I got evicted when I was 22, ended up buying a house, went up in Valley, went to them, told them that I was putting a new kitchen in, and used that money to buy the idea from the farmer. So that was great because I had to quit my job, I'd remortgaged my house, I didn't have any income, and owned a t-shirt that no one wanted. So I used that business plan there, which I still have in my office, to attract seed capital, and it was smart money. There were 8 friends of my parents who had run businesses before. One ran a bank, one was a director of a very large company, one was my old boss who ran a research company, one guy ran a PR business. So they put in 25 grand each, we raised $200,000. I sold down a percentage of the business, and I got in, wee bit of echo, and I got in people that could help me as well as putting in money. Because the third reason businesses fail is because there isn't enough management support. So I was kind of on a journey that was hungry to learn. So I really like this idea of writing business plans. And there's a couple of things, because there's a little exercise that happened to me over the weekend that I'll tell you in a minute. And it just reminded me about the power of getting the basics right. Does everyone know the 4 Ps that Kotler taught in the 80s? Do you guys still learn that? Okay, well, it's the thing about, you know, product, price, place, promotion. And I was doing an exercise with my daughters around a little business which I'll tell you about, which they're starting. And they added people and projections. So I guess what I'm encouraging you to do is, as you embark on this challenge, going back and getting the headings right, and actually giving yourself the challenge of answering all the basics. Because the worst thing you can do is start with a business getting into diatribes of, you know, waffly ideals and burying yourself in language and confusing people because you haven't really got it right. For me, it's about getting absolute precision behind the levers of business. So there are 4 Ps and there's 3 Cs, you know, and the 3 Cs really are about what your consumer thinks. It doesn't cost any money to gather insights around people who can be your customers. So for me, gathering insights around my customers was about giving people the t-shirts and then asking how they performed compared to the synthetic t-shirts that we had to wear in the 80s. Because back in the 80s, the whole outdoor market was only polypropylene or polyester. And the idea was, does this work as well? So I just gave away t-shirts and listened to feedback. But that idea of kind of feedback coming from people who can actually be customers is so important. And that requires a prototype. So at Icebreaker, we use this concept called build to think. And it's like actually building physical models or even visual models, getting it out of your head, not getting too buried in language. You know, I like the discipline of no more than 1,000 words that you're talking about. You know, language can be stuff which we hide behind when we think something's quite good and we don't quite have the clarity. So I go back to the basic headings, the levers of business, and start looking at how they work together as a system. So my daughter Isabella said, "Dad, I'd like more pocket money so I can buy an iPod Touch." And I said, "Well, you get $5 a week, so you'll be, 26 by the time you can afford one. What are the options?" And she said, "Well, I could earn some money." So she talked about, earning $3 an hour or something like that. So we just came up with the idea of something I did when I was 12, which is a lemonade stall. But what was fun was when I got my little daughters, it was no different from entering Japan, which is what we're doing in Icebreaker, starting in September 2012. It came back to kind of getting those basics right around the 4 Ps, and they came up with a couple of little insights that I thought I'd share with you when I wrote this on the plane on the way here. When we started doing the plan, we could imagine it. That's what Bianca said, who's 8. When we started doing the plan, we could imagine it. So when they started filling in what they thought about the promotion strategy, they're going to get the little young one, Mia, giving away their lemonade samples because she's the cutest. So she's head of promotions. That we talked about a branding strategy and pricing strategy and putting that into projections. They realised that if they could sell, 30 drinks an hour for 3 hours, that's $160 income minus $20 costs. They could net $140 divided by 3. Then they worked out they're making about 5 times what they'd make if they were, doing the lawns for me or something. So I reckon it's exactly the same principle if you're running a multinational business or if you're 8 trying to get something off the ground. So I've got 3 daughters, 3 sisters, 6 nieces, and finally I get a dog and I go, "Let's get a boy dog," and everyone goes, "Dad, we're getting a girl dog." So I've got another female in my life called Molly. So the final bit of the story is brand, and I want to tell you a little story around Icebreaker around that. So this was about the principles of branding. The reasons businesses fail: lack of capital, lack of management, undifferentiated product. So really it's undifferentiated product and messaging. So the quest for any new idea we come up with, whether it's within the Icebreaker brand, for example, we've got quite a few different ranges, each with a different story. Superfine, Bodyfit, which is their active underwear, GT, which is their technical underwear. Getting the story right around that. Different and meaningful. So when I launched Icebreaker, everything was synthetic. You wouldn't believe it now, but the entire industry was only synthetic. So we had to be different from the synthetic guys. It was about, how do we not be plastic? How do we make them the enemy? How do we fight against something? Setting ourselves up as a fighter brand. So on one side, you're pushing away your competitors, and the other side, you're trying to work closely and create intimacy with your customers, which is that meaning. So there's always the tension between differentiating and creating meaning and bringing people in with pictures, for example, of children and puppies. So what really the Icebreaker story is about is taking a 3,000-year-old fabric and making it a brand new idea, unlocking a story based deep in New Zealand psyche, which hasn't really been told before, about showing that it's a magnificent animal from the high country of New Zealand, and then building a kind of a slightly mythological story around it. The reason the woman is riding Ramator is because I have 3 daughters, 6 nieces, and 3 sisters, and if it was the other way around, I'd be in major trouble. But it was about trying to create imagery that was so radically different that then when you walk into an outdoor store in Verbier or Chamonix or Timaru, you're confronted with something which starts, which is really about creating some sort of dissonance, which if we can draw people in through its power or its beauty, starts an inquiry. What is this stuff? So we always start disruptive, and then as you get closer to the product, the explanation gets more earnest and meaningful. So just very quickly, the products that we do are across the Alpine. We've got a bike business now, running specialty product, outerwear, venture travel. Okay, there you go. This is the real reason I'm in business. Women's underwear. Took us quite a while to break into this category. And men's undies and stuff like that. Again, children. It's my daughter Mia in the far right. So structurally, what we've built, on the product side, we've got a product strategy, we've got a pricing strategy. We had to be premium price. In order to be premium price, we had to build the meaning behind Icebreaker as being premium and superior. We also reflected that through our packaging. We also reflected it through our distribution. So we've gone from the 2,000 stores that you mentioned this year. By the end of this year, we'll have 3,500 stores. We sell in 42 countries. We finished this year at over 160 million. This year we'll do close to 190 million, so we're growing fast. I've got a team of 350 people across the 8 bases that we have geographically. And all of that started from an impulsive idea that really connected with me at a deep level. So, as we grow the business, it always comes down to the personal inspiration and the passion you feel for the idea that you're doing. You get rich because you feel passionate about something. People that are going out to get rich normally just, obsess about that and end up being miserable. The people who I know who are hugely successful are happy, generous people who have something burning inside them that they create through their own vision, their own passion, and their ability to build teams around them, and to execute, to a really high level against the basics of what's in a plan. So, just another little story. So, in 1997, I almost went broke. Now, that's happened a couple of times in the early days. First year was 110,000, second year was 300, and I lost 156,000 of the 200,000 seed capital. The second year, we did 330,000 in sales, and we made $531 profit. And Noel Todd, who was our chairman, said, "Jeremy, this is the first company I've been involved in where you can drink the profits, and still remain sober." He has more expensive taste in wine than I do. But in 1997, we almost went broke because I got a letter from someone saying, "Hey, you're supposed to be selling premium product and my garment's falling apart." And it was a grower called Mandy Cameron. So I went down and saw the Camerons and met some of their friends and realised on farm what was happening. On farm what was happening was we were anonymously buying yarn and were disconnected from the wool supply. So we knew it was New Zealand merino wool, but we didn't know if it was any good. So from this very dark moment where I had a whole bunch of product in production, which I didn't know was going to work, and a whole bunch of product in the market that was doing us a disservice, you have to think pretty deep and pretty fast in that type of situation. And what we ended up doing was, because we could understand the attributes of the fibre that impacted fabric quality by having a deep inquiry with the growers, literally I stayed on merino stations for 2 weeks until I got to the bottom of it, then we could evolve the business model to start buying wool and making our own yarn and making our own fabric. So we pioneered a new system. From that darkness, we pioneered a new system around working with our growers, giving them visibility up to 3 years in advance, guaranteeing the quality and paying them a premium price, which has totally changed the on-farm economics. And because of that, we have certainty of raw material supply, so we'll buy over a third of the merino wool in New Zealand now. We've got a total certainty of that, and we built the business model, which wasn't just about selling clothes, it was about where they come from and the story that came from that. Suddenly everything started fitting together. And that's when we created this innovation around barcode. So that's the reason why we've had 450 different magazines globally write about us in the last 18 months. That's why Time magazine gave us 2 pages. And all it is putting some technology that didn't cost us very much over the components that really Icebreaker has become. So Icebreaker has moved from being a nice t-shirt to something that embodies a system that starts with the growers on the born side and works all the way over to the end users, whether they're in Japan or France or in New Zealand on the worn side. And Barcode was just a fun consumer device where people can go inside the supply chain and meet the families where it came from. And we've had customers fly from the US and stay on these stations because of this, and through their own perseverance track down these people. So that's just a little story around when adversity happens, because none of your ideas will work as you imagine. None of them do. Someone said to me, running a small business, you have more highs and lows in a month than most people do in a year, because you're always dealing with the uncertain, always dealing with the unexpected. And you have to draw on yourself and constantly put yourself into the unknown, and that's the exciting thing about running a business. It's this constant learning mechanism of stepping into the unknown. I've never run a $300 million business before, and I know in 3 years we're going to have one. You know, so what do I have to do to evolve myself to learn about that? What I have to do is find guys who have run billion-dollar businesses and learn from them. So what I'm constantly building around me is a network, a learning network, and I spend probably the equivalent of 6 or 8 weeks a year fully immersed in different learning networks all around the world that I've created around me as a way of, what I'm scared of is me being the limiting factor of the business. So it's this constant learning journey. So my final point is around this idea of prototyping. So prototyping is taking your ideas and giving them physical form. So by physical form, I actually mean a sketch or an object or anything. It's the belief that when it gets out of your head and other people can see it or comment it, or in my case, wear it or touch it or give feedback on it, then you can start engaging people around the process of creativity. So at Icebreaker, we prototype everything. If the finance team want to change the system, they publish all the changes in reporting so people can walk through the system that they're doing and give feedback on it. When we've started doing some retail stores, we've opened a dozen stores in the last 2 years, and two years ago I set ourselves the challenge of opening a flagship store in New York. Well, the reason we did that was I wanted us to be scared of it. The rents were $700,000 a year. We had to sell $2 million worth of stuff just to break even. And that bought out the A team and my team. So we started creating physical prototypes. We started sketching what ideas could look like in that environment. And Alex, you were working for us at that time. Then we built a physical prototype. We got cardboard and we made these messy life-size objects that you could walk through and physically experience how we were changing the space. And we turned them into artifacts that could talk to people. Then 3 months later we launched it, and all those artifacts that we created around there are what's in that store. And it didn't cost very much, and it was just quick and dirty and getting it out there and testing the physical impact of our ideas on people. So it just reinforces to me what you imagine and prototype, get out of your head, and do what my daughters did, that little business plan, so you can kind of see your imagination taking form. That's really what the beauty of and power of these type of exercises is. It's all real, it's all fun, and for the purpose of business is to create new things. So how we create new things and why we create them. This is a very personal journey, so it's very ambiguous. It requires clarity in order to lead others and engage people. It requires conviction, self-belief, and it requires courage. So I really encourage you guys to get on the court and go for it with this challenge, because you will learn so much, not only about business, but about yourselves. Thank you.